Hello there. Welcome to Pragmatics, Lecture 1. In modern linguistics, several conflicting definitions have arisen. According to Kressel, pragmatics is a study of language from the point of view of the users, especially of the choices they make, the constraints they encounter in using language in social interactions, and the effects their use of language has on the other participants in an act of communication. According to Leach, pragmatics is a study of how utterances have meaning in situations. The difference between semantics and pragmatics. Drawing a division line between semantics and pragmatics is necessary to understand the nature of pragmatic information. The distinction reflects the difference between linguistic and extra-linguistic information. Meaning and use, context invariant and context sensitive meaning, saying and implying. So if semantics is saying, pragmatics is implying. If semantics is context invariant, pragmatics is context sensitive. If semantics is literal, pragmatics is non-literal use. If semantics is content, pragmatics is force. Whereas semantics relates meaning to logic and truth, linguistic meaning, pragmatics relates meaning to context of utterance, speaker meaning. Others do not consider pragmatics to be a level of linguistic theory, but a way of linking language to social aspects. Then pragmatics is more akin to sociolinguistics than semantics. According to Levinson, he proves that pragmatics is part of competence and component of linguistic theory. The first part in pragmatics is speech acts. The notion of speech acts becomes one of the most important issues in pragmatics. Austin, 1962, introduces the term to mean the actions performed in saying something. Austin revolutionizes the way people think of language. Not only do people use language to make statements, but also to perform actions. A speech act is represented by the issuance of a certain kind of utterance. This is called the locutionary act, together with reference to the intention of the speaker himself or herself. This is called a locutionary force. What is intended? Command, for example, promise, declaration. And the third element is verlocution, which is the effects it achieves on the listener. So we have the locutionary act or the locution, the production of the speech itself. Then we have the elocution, the intention. Then we have the verlocution, what we call the effect on the listener. Types of speech acts. Speech acts are classified into different types. We have according to Levinson here, we have the declarative, representative, commissive, directive, and expressive acts. There are other classifications according to Searle and other scholars. Example, welcome to the restaurant. This is a speech act. Greeting. I don't eat lobster. This is assertion. Thank you. This is expressive speech act. I will be right back. Promise. Can you get me a glass of juice, please? This is directive. And we have many other examples. Characteristics. A regular speech act has the following syntactic characteristics. The verb, number one, the verb of the main clause is an elocutionary verb. Number two, this verb is in the simple present tense. Number three, the subject of this verb is in the first person. Number four, the indirect object of this verb, if one is present, is you. Optionally, this verb is preceded by the adverb hereby. I hereby. You can test it. 6. The verb is followed by reported speech clause. Direct Speech Act and Indirect Speech Act, DSA, ISA. Direct Speech Act and Indirect Speech Act. Speech acts are classified into direct and indirect speech acts. In sales terms, an indirect speech act, ISA, is a speech act performed by means of another. In direct speech acts, DSA, there is a direct relationship between the form and the function, whereas in indirect speech act, the form does not directly reflect its functional use. What is important is how hearers interpret the force of the indirect speech act. Felicity conditions are quite helpful in this regard. In indirect speech act, the form resembles a certain direct speech act. The second part in pragmatics is presupposition. Presuppositions can be defined as what a speaker assumes is true or is known by the hearer. They rely on precise meanings that are embedded inside utterance, thus producing specific assumptions. Levinson emphasized that this concept, presupposition, is based more closely on the actual linguistic structure of sentence. For example, temporal clause, cleft sentence, non-restrictive relative clause. The following utterance illustrates the concept of presupposition. 3 of his brothers are in the army. This sentence, the implicit meaning embedded inside this utterance, indicates that he has more than 3 brothers, maybe 4 or 5. This meaning is considered a presupposition because we deal with the specific assumption of a rather precise matter that is embedded within the sentences. Presupposition can be triggered by syntactic structure, as in the following sentence, where the relative clause gives rise to the presupposition. Sentence A, my father, who was a teacher, died last year. B, my father, who was a teacher, didn't die last year. The structure of this sentence, the fact that they include a non-restrictive relative clause, triggers a presupposition. My father was a teacher. Evidence that we have presupposition in A comes from the fact that it remains intact under negation. Both A and B have the same presupposition. However, presuppositions that are triggered by factive verbs such as know are not negated. I know that the man did this. I do not know that the man did this. Here the presupposition is not negated. Conventional implicature are often associated with particular lexical items such as again. For example, he stole the car again. Thank you for listening and see you in lecture 2.